This episode is brought to you by Indie Film Hustle TV, the world's first streaming service dedicated to filmmakers, screenwriters, and content creators. Learn more at indiefilmhustle.tv. Can you tell people, because I really think this is important, how many screenplays had you written prior to directing your first film?
Well, no, I directed my first film out of film school basically 2 years afterward.
Okay.
Low-budget horror film called Seizure, which
Yes.
I wrote.
Uh-huh.
And I had come out of film school in '71 as a writer-director in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I set out to be. That was my dream. And, Godard and Buñuel and the European bag, the Italians too, Fellini among them. I mean, the obvious ones, but they were all leaders in the culture. And I wanted to be one. They were writer-directors, most of them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what attracted me to the concept. And I had been a writer before film school. When I was 19, I wrote a book called A Child's Night Dream, which was eventually published in '97. But so the writing in me was always strong. But then after my service in Vietnam, I explained this in the book, as you know, the intensity of that experience required a concentration at the highest level of your physical senses, smell, sight, sound. You walk in the jungle and, you have to pay really 360-degree attention. That intensity in some way became the camera eye for me, because I had never concentrated on the camera as much as I did there. Mm-hmm. My camera, in my head. And that's what I tried to reproduce when I went to film school on the GI Bill, which paid my tuition there. But it was, going out and making a short film is very chaotic for most of us. You have to get the cooperation of all your fellow students. It's not easy. It's like a Chinese cultural critique session, But each of us made films over that course of those 2 years. Some were successful, some were not. Short films are tricky, but they are an art form in themselves, and you learn a lot. You learn a lot physically, technically. You produce, you edit, you shoot, and you write. Now, most of the kids were not interested in writing. That was what was amazing to me. There was no requirement at film school to go to screenwriting class. No, none at all. That always bothered me, because I went, maybe a few kids went, and I wrote screenplays during that period. And I learned from these teachers. They were good teachers. They were NYU teachers. And I bought a lot of screenplays and I read them, because they were becoming more available in the 60s. So you could read the screenplay, not from American movies as much as from European films. It's very interesting that, in a sense, the study of film starts with the Europeans. It was over the 70s, it became more and more Americanized. And finally, they started to publish some screenplays. But some of the greatest screenplays in American film I have never seen any copies of them, unless you go to the studio vaults. So there is a big hole there. And screenplays, the screenplay writer was regarded as kind of a worm in the back room, and the director was a star. He was wearing the scarf, Bertolucci, and he would come out on the set, and he'd make up his ideas as he went along. And there was a kind of free-form improvisation that was fun. It was the beginning of a new thing, and there was not the burden of money, the commercial feeling that you had to make your money back about that system, because these films in Europe were made for very little. So that was the environment in which but I always was, I was disciplined as a writer. So after I got out of film school and drove a cab and worked in various jobs, got married, went through the whole hardship of trying to make it in the film business, which is very difficult, even in those days, far more perhaps. And in that period, I kept writing screenplays. Every year I set a goal for myself of at least trying to write 1.5, maybe 2 screenplays and a couple of treatments to turn out stuff, sending them out to agents. No response, rejections. So you say how many? I don't really remember. I would say about 8 to 11, as well as long treatments. One of those treatments, the cover-up, was my first break. It sold, option sold, almost made. And I got to work with Robert Bolt, who was a great screenwriter of that time, in Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia.
Wow.
Bolt was a serious student, but he was of a style of screenwriter that you lay it all out on the page. The architecture is there. every line of dialogue is there. It's a whole other way, different than film school. So where you're writing more of a treatment. So I was always between the two. I was trying to write the full out screenplay, and at the same time and when I became a director finally, in the business in 85 with 86 with Salvador, and then Platoon, I stayed true to this screenwriter loyalty, which is write the script, write it as much as you can, give on paper before you do it. And I have that mindset. And I think a lot of people underrate that, don't make much of it.